Welcome to B2B Synergy, the Power Partners USA podcast, your exclusive guide to discovering the potential of B2B partnerships. I'm Alan Armijo, owner of Power Partners USA business-to-business introduction and referral service. Our members are B2B professionals who team up to provide each other repeat referral business or collaboration. Today's episode shines the light on Tatondra Grant, owner of Tatondra Grant Coaching and Consulting, and new Power Partner USA member. I've been looking forward to talking to Tatondra about her executive coaching business. I'm excited to talk about her leadership coaching, HR consulting, and personal development services. When I met Tatondra, I immediately saw the value her expertise brings to business owners, executives, and teams, and know she is a great asset to our Power Partner USA membership. So welcome, Tatondra. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I've heard about executive coaching, but this area is a bit unknown to me. Could you explain your services and tell us about your role as executive coach and consultant?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just a little bit about executive coaching. Executive coaching is really a professional development process. It's there to help leaders, anyone who's looking to enhance their performance, self-awareness, have any goals that they want to attain. So that's really the purpose behind executive coaching. So for myself, in my role as an executive coach, basically I serve as a strategic advisor, accountability partner, basically going through different coaching practices to help the client, working with them collaboratively to identify growth opportunities that they may have in any challenges that they may have in creating a plan to help them grow from a personal level as well as a professional level.
I was curious what inspired you to launch your coaching and consulting practice after many years of working in the corporate arena?
Really, the thing that truly transitioned me to want to do coaching was because I was partially coaching in my current role of HR, and I realized that I could have more of a significant impact by focusing exclusively on coaching and developing leaders, helping them transform, and working with, like, from an organizational perspective, seeing how I could have that impact on a person's growth. And because I am very passionate, one of the things about me is I'm very passionate about helping people reach their full potential. So in coaching, it just I naturally gravitated towards it and seeing how I can impact their human potential and give them the support they need to grow.
Like, how do you quantify, how do you know that you got through or helped a client? How do you quantify things?
One of the things is they tell you, I think the biggest thing is how you really quantified it is when they're able to tell you, I recognize change in myself. They see change in themselves. Their leader sees changes in them. There's always a organizational impact too with coaching as well. So when a leader recognizes, oh, they've learned how to communicate better, they're not as emotional, they are more understanding, they're pausing and giving people space to speak. All of those things are recognizable behavior. So that's one way you're able to see it.
So you work with the executives themselves, but also staff and employees,
Mhm. Yes,
whole teams, of course.
absolutely. Yeah, we work at different levels. So depending on what an organization needs, that determines what type of services I provide, whether that's individual coaching, one-on-one with an executive, whether it's team coaching, working with numerous individuals, in one department. It just really depends on the organizational need. And sometimes it's a personal one in the need. Like, I want to grow individually. How can I do this, personally and professionally?
Yeah, because they are related, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so you have several advanced degrees and certifications. What are they, and how does your educational background contribute to work? And does your insight come from a combination of education and, corporate or past work experience?
I would say yes, that it does come with a combination, but I have a MBA with a concentration in human resource management. And then I also have a master's degree in executive coaching and consulting. So I would say that both of them have contributed to me being successful in these areas from a strategic perspective. It allows me to understand organizations, how they operate, see those different dynamics, and know how I can come in and impact that change or help them along whatever lines it is that they need support in. I would say that coaching has it allows you to bring in interventions that aligns with the business goals. So you're able to identify the organizational barriers. Teams don't want to change. We've had a lot of transition. You're getting a lot of resistance. So being able to see those, work with managers and understanding the language that people are speaking, that's a big piece. When you're working with different organizations, they all use different language. So being able to utilize that language and understanding, I really see it as bridging the gap between the two. So that probably would be the biggest piece, being able to bridge the gap between the corporate and the personal.
Right. Because you describe your approach as personal, precise, and transformational. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
It's very
Yeah.
um,
To sum it up, personal, precise, and transformational. What does that mean? Like breaking down those initial barriers and
yeah.
being able to identify these transformational changes?
So when you look at it from a personal, so every coaching engagement we go into, it is very specific and tailored to the individual. Everybody doesn't need the same thing in coaching. So it's really about having process and understanding who the individual is, what their needs are, having that goal, developing that, what my approach to coaching is I do like to come in, talk to everyone who's involved. And a big part of it is we can do an assessment, which, we do the 360-degree, getting that feedback, doing that, or any type of leadership assessment. Some organizations have their own, we can utilize those. And then having a goal alignment, knowing that the objectives the individual wants to obtain are the same objectives for the organization. So the personal and the professional, they really need to align. And then I truly adjust my process based on how the client responds, how they adjust, because you have people who are going to be very resistant and you have people who are all about, yes, I'm ready to make a change, ready to do it now. So you really have to adapt your style to that. And then another thing a lot of people may not think about, but is cultural. So sometimes, culture will have heavy influences on how people react, how they respond. So it's very important to understand those as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because, and I don't know exactly what you mean by cultural, but is that individual cultures, races, or what do you mean by culture?
It can be individual, racial, personal, it could be ethical, it can be generational. Like those things, like it's gonna be a completely different coaching experience for someone who, was probably born in, the 80s as opposed to someone who was born in the 30s. It's just a different time, a different period. They were raised in, different during different, years. So their experiences are what make them in addition to their societal exposure. So it really depends on when I talk about culture, it really is a broad definition of it could be a number of things, but it's really about their life experiences versus, their work experiences versus, their
Um,
growing up as well.
how has the whole change in DEI affected your business, or has it? What's your thoughts on? Does this change anything you do when you go into corporate structure versus how you used to, or what's the latest?
I think, well, it depends on the organization, first of all. Because if you have an organization that is really pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion, if that is really their forefront, their motto, where they want to push all of their objectives towards, you really have to be mindful about that because it's all about how can we have diverse teams? How can we have diverse groups? So I won't say it's impacted it as much. It's more about what their overall goal and objective is. Because you have some that's not a major concern. So it just really depends on the organization.
Right. It just seems that like the term woke is thrown around as a
Mhm.
pejorative, and it's like changing, making people change, forcing people to change what they're doing
Mhm.
and holding contracts against them, things like that, just for the way that they want to have a certain, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm struggling with understanding how that can just happen and why do people just adjust, or is it you see this turning back if you have a new administration?
So I would say it creates a lot of stress and it creates a lot of more pressure for leaders. And that probably would be the biggest impact to my business, in that you have more leaders that may be more reserved to speak at certain things that they don't necessarily agree with. So then we're working with, how do we help build their confidence in being that type of leader, if that's truly themselves, if they want to present their authentic self to the masses, how do we help them get there? So from that perspective, I would say absolutely, it probably would impact them on that level. Do I think it may change? Absolutely. I think anytime you put new leadership in place and they bring their new agendas, their new policies, their new procedures, it's gonna impact everyone, whether we wanna agree with it or not, it does. It has some impact. How it may impact the business, who knows? It just really depends on what changes they're bringing to the forefront.
Yeah. So you're on the front lines of that, right? I can.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you describe your areas of specialization, or how do you differentiate yourself, or what do you specialize in? Is there a certain area that you like to focus on?
My area is more about leaders, emerging leaders, those executives who are truly seeking to make a change. So I will say, when people usually come to me, it's because they have ran out of ideas. They've reached a point where they've hit a wall and they're looking for something different because their current way of doing business is no longer working or no longer supporting them. So I don't necessarily have a particular industry that I work with, because I've worked in a variety of industries, more about the individual. So people who are ready to make a change, or even people who are hesitant about a change and they're just looking for that accountability partner, like, I need support getting here, or I need to build a certain skill. Those are the individuals who would really benefit from our services.
So when you talk about leadership and coaching in that regard, how does it your approach to integrate HR consulting or personal development? Is it as needed, or is that part of the structures? Are they it's all inclusive? When you talk about leadership, is it all of these other things too that are involved?
So I would say HR and coaching while they overlap in my business, they're a little different, because I think my experience in HR really gives me the upper advantage, because I'm able to see from a different perspective. Like, I can see the employee side and I can also see the organization side. So I think it kind of gives me an edge there, because I am able to speak in a language that may allow a more collaborative approach on both ends, because I have worked in that space for so long. So, and then also being able to identify trends, like when an organization is going through a change management, there's going to be a massive amount of resistance. Some people are going to get on board, some aren't. So being able to help support organizations through that process and help them prepare, while also supporting leaders, because oftentimes it's not the leaders who don't want to make the change, it's the individuals who they are supporting that don't necessarily want to get on board, because it's like, oh, it's another change that's coming, or it's something new. So, especially when organizations are going through mergers and acquisitions, you're throwing a lot of new policies out there. So, I would say that's how it really overlaps in my business. But for the most part, coaching is done separately. If anyone has HR services that they would like, from onboarding to helping develop a handbook to recruiting, talent management, all of those pieces, but also if they, have leaders who need additional support, like let's say you've promoted someone into a new role and you want to help them build the skills to be a more effective leader, like that type of support as well. So they kind of go hand in hand, but for the most part, it's really separate.
Okay, good to know. So, what is something about leadership development or executive coaching that most people wouldn't expect or think about? What surprises them?
I think a lot of people think when it comes to leadership that it's really not about emotion. It is really about emotional regulation. Like teaching people how to manage their emotions is a high part of being a leader. And I think it's a common misconception that people should keep their emotions out of the workplace, out of the office. It's very hard to do. A lot of times we have challenges because people don't know how to manage their. So part of coaching is, helping people understand that having that emotional regulation and managing it on a different level helps them as well. I would say another thing is that coaching is not me coming in solving your problem. It is about a collaborative experience. It's about you working with me to develop your process, hit your goals, and moving forward. It's very reflection based. It requires you to do a lot of work. I am not going to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to be willing to put the time in. You have to be willing to do the homework and make those changes in order for it to be truly successful. So I think those are like some really common misconceptions that people have.
So then the question is, who hires you in the sense that are you hired by the CEO to help with, say, management, dealing with staff? Because it seems like you have to have a win-win for everybody. And like
Mhm.
you say, you don't solve their problems, but that means you have to treat everybody, including the employees, listen to them and their issues as well as
Yes.
the leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with a lot of HR personnel when it comes to, you know, getting within an organization. Oftentimes it is HR reaching out. They're like, hey, I have a person who's currently a performance improvement plan. We really want to keep this individual. Can you come and support and help them build the skills they need, develop and become the leader that we need them to be? So a lot of times it is HR reaching out, it is executives reaching out on their own. I don't know if how often you've heard, but it's very lonely at the top of leadership. So the higher you get, the less friends you have, the less people you're able to talk to. So we do have a lot of executives who reach out because it is very lonely and they need someone who can support them and listen to them and also be that confidential ear and also an accountability partner as well. So that's a big piece as well of individuals who reach out and support us. There are times where I've had managers reach out because they really want to be able to promote a person or help someone build skills to go to the next level. And so it just really depends on where a person is in transition and what the organization needs, what they would reach out for.
So sometimes it's a one-on-one consultation. Sometimes it's two or
Mhm.
more people then, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times people just reach out on their own. Like the most of my clients that I have, they're individuals who really are focusing on developing personally and professionally. So it's not an organization reaching out to me. They're reaching out on their own to say, I would love to. This is, it's typically high people who are very high achievers or people who are looking to, get to the next level. They're like, I've been given feedback that I don't necessarily agree with, but in order for me to get to the next level, I really need to work on the X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So they reach out on their own, they schedule their own and, develop their own plan with me to work.
You go like cha-ching, that's a sale because they already know that they got a problem, right?
I know what it is. Sometimes you have clients who don't, then they come and they're like, I don't know what I need to do, but this is where I want to be.
Uh-huh.
But then we work through that. Like, how do we help you get to where you want to be? That's a big piece of it.
That's good. Let's talk about your client makeup. We kind of discussed the types of clients by title, but what industries or areas do you work?
The biggest area is, I would say, I don't honestly, I don't have a specific industry because I worked in sports and entertainment, I worked in education, healthcare. Mental health is a big one for me. I will throw this out there. Coaching is not therapy. That's a big misconception. We are not going to be your therapist. We're going to be your support partner, but it's not the same as therapy. So I do want to make sure I put that out there. But as far as other industries, like education is a big one. I have a lot of clients who are administrative staffs. So we work through their challenges. So those are like some industries that I work with consistently, but I'm open to all industries. I don't really have if you're in this industry, don't reach out.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay. And what is your territory? Is it all in person or do you reach outside of Long Beach?
No, it is all over. So I do in person for anybody who's local, or if any clients want to do any training, even if it's outside of Long Beach. I've traveled for engagements before. So if you want to do team building, things of that nature on site, I'm absolutely open to that. So I will travel, but 90% of what I do is virtual and remote from people all over. I find that remote is easier for a lot of individuals because they can, especially when it comes to scheduling, it's a matter of, letting me get on your calendar and working at a time that works best for you. I'm very accommodating schedule wise. So it really is more about what the client needs. Now, for HR services, that's a little different because sometimes HR consulting services, it requires that I come on site, do a needs analysis. We go through, a process and actually identify what the organization needs as a whole. So those services can be a combination as well, but it's a little bit more of a lengthier time frame.
Right. Okay. So just out of curiosity, I would assume HR has its regulations, certain rules that all companies have to abide by. But what about leadership training? Is that kind of more open and freewheeling for you?
Yes, it depends on so that really depends on the organization. So if an organization needs a specific type of training, if it's something that I do, I would absolutely support them. But if not, I have people who I can absolutely refer them to. So I have a lot of HR people who also work in the same space who we refer individuals to depending on the specialty. Absolutely. It just really depends.
Okay. Are there any specific success stories or examples you'd like to share that illustrate the impact of your coaching or consulting work?
Sure, we can talk about a client who gave me permission. I'm gonna throw that out there.
Okay.
I had to ask, I don't want to just share people's business without
Yeah.
their permission. But I previously worked with a leader who was in retail. She was a store manager and she had been in her role. So she started out in a sales role and was promoted to a manager role. But she had worked in that role for 10 years as a manager. And then she was promoted to a regional. And with regional comes a little bit higher level of responsibility. But she was really struggling with imposter syndrome because she truly didn't feel that she deserved it. She struggled with, having that confidence that she needed to continue to grow and develop. And so once she got promoted, her being a high achiever kind of tanked a little. It went down gradually because she just didn't have that same level of confidence. So one of the things we did working together was how can we help build her confidence? How can we help her develop and how can we help her realize that she's not an imposter because she worked her way through the process and helping her identify what was holding her back was key. A lot of it was, a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of things that other individuals around her were saying. And, she was the first female in her organization to ever be promoted to a regional. So, that having that as an additional weight, but helping her transition through and understand that, no, she deserves a seat at the table and building that confidence around it was a big piece of helping her be successful. And, we still meet once every 6 months just to do a check in, to see how she's doing, how she's trending. And, things are much better. So I would say that's
And
probably the greatest success.
and that's just because of a coach is a motivator, coach is a teacher. I would say there's a lot of therapy, even though it's not therapy, just the psychology of it, right? There's a lot of aspects that you cover. It sounds like in getting a person to go from, say, that imposter syndrome or thinking negatively about themselves
Mm,
to switch,
absolutely. That's a
turn it
big
around.
one.
Good, good. All right. So let me remind everybody that Power Partners USA is a B2B introduction service. We introduce business professionals to each other who can provide each other repeat leads and referrals or do business collaboration. we are targeting this podcast to your power partners to bring you more repeat referral business. Who are your power partners? I see you mentioned recruiters, staffing agencies.
Definitely anyone who's in the HR field, any management consultants or business advisors. So anybody who's going in dealing with strategies and see that there are some leadership or cultural barriers that may prevent success in the organization, those would be really good partners. And then also any, like, I would say legal as well, because a lot of times when legal is involved, there are mergers, acquisitions, especially when it's family businesses. You have those dynamics. That would be a good business partner. But I would say those would probably be my top ones.
What is your association with healthcare? How does that tie in?
In healthcare, I've worked in healthcare with actually nurses. So I would say that's probably my biggest area with nurses in helping them, but it's because of burnout and how to transition that back. So, especially traveling nurses, that's a big one for me. Individuals who are going from place to place to place, but they're managing their own schedules, their own business, but having to go in I guess the biggest thing is the industry because there's such a high need. So that high need for nurses everywhere and being a traveling nurse is a lot of pressure and stress. It can be. So working in that area outside of nurses, I really haven't worked with a lot of other parts of healthcare, except for in mental health. Now that's a whole different situation because that's working with individuals who are therapists and then also administration in mental health. So that's a little different from the typical like day-to-day healthcare.
Right. That's good to know because, I've been getting involved with Arlene, who's one of our power partners who has a nursing registry. And I volunteer myself at Long Beach Memorial and I talk to a lot of nurses there and, you know, kind of understand what you're saying about burnout and a lot of issues. They seem to enjoy their job though, for the most part. They get along with each other.
They do, but sometimes, they struggle with saying no. That's a big thing you see with nurses because it's a very high demand job and it's a very high need job. Part of the thing about nurses is they're very empathetic. You get a group of people who really love and really care for people, and they don't want to see a hospital be without a nurse or down a nurse because then that impacts poor quality. But it impacts so many things. And so it's really teaching them that it's okay to have that self care. It's okay to say no. It's okay to put up those boundaries. So it's a big piece. Yeah.
That's good. Good to know. Let's see. What type of referrals or leads do you think you can offer to power partners that you've met so far or know about?
So far, I've reached out to a couple individuals who I would love to partner with on some things, but I think the biggest thing for me is actually finding how I can support the team. I think as I learn more about what industries we have, I would love to be able to be a good referral service as well. One of the things I have done so far is legal because a lot of what I do on the HR side is very supportive of legal because, a lot of my clients need people to go over documents that they've drafted and things along those lines. So definitely anyone in the legal space, that's where I've been able to refer the most business because that's what I've dealt with the most, right?
So, in talking with people, you know that they need an attorney or they need something regarding legal documentation, right?
Especially as I work with other entrepreneurs who are, new in their business as well and trying to help them find out, what type of support they need. That's been the biggest one so far, definitely.
Okay. And then what should we be like? How would you say that we should qualify prospects for you? I mean, I guess one of the ways I ask this is like, what are the words, phrases, and conditions that we should listen for when we hear people talking about their need for leadership coaching for your services?
So I would say anybody who is struggling with managing performance issues, especially they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know how to get this person to listen, or I don't know what we should do to help so and so." Like those are really good phrases I would say would be good ones to help it, be able to refer individuals to me or, we're working on transitioning or developing or adding a new, business line, definitely when it comes to transitions or changes, those would be keywords too to support. Especially if people are like, oh, I am very overwhelmed. I don't know what to do next. My team isn't getting along. Those are also things that I would be really good at supporting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
How is the work from home affected, how you deal with teams and performance issues like that? Because they're not even interacting all the time in person. Is that a thing?
You would be amazed that they have just as many issues, honestly. One of the biggest one is communication and accountability. Because people are not in the office, it's very difficult at times to get a hold of other workers. People aren't necessarily always as productive when they're on their own time. They're doing things that may not necessarily be for the organizations. Do see a lot of issues in that area. So it's about how can we support and make sure people are on task doing their jobs. On the flip side of that is when people are working from home, we've noticed leaders have become a little bit more micromanaging because they're trying to make sure people are on task and doing what needs to be done for the sake of the organization. So I would love to say it's just a one way, but it's not. It just really depends on the organization, what has to be done. But it has shifted a lot, especially when it comes to autonomy as well. People are more in control of what they do from home. So it does give some leaders a little bit more air of confidence and excitement, especially if things are being done. But when they're not being done, you really see that negative impact on it.
And I guess that's, is the work getting done or not is a key
Mhm.
element of finding there's a problem, maybe.
Mhm.
Is that like, is that the trigger for you to come in because the work's not getting done?
Usually people call me when they say, oh, we have a person who's not performing. Like we see they're logged in, we see they're doing all of these things, but they're not getting anything done to the level that they were in the office. So then it's how do we come in and have a conversation to understand what's really happening? Like, how do we set those goals? Like, even though whole, what next steps look like. So that's a big piece of when I am brought
Mhm.
in.
So is your work always kind of after there's a problem, or do you have any like preventative things that you do for companies?
Unfortunately, it's mostly after there's a problem, but I do like to work with people to be a little bit more proactive, especially when you know you're about to have change. That's a good time to get a coach involved,
Hmm.
especially when you know you're about to go through, let's say you're about to do organizational restructuring. You're about to change some things. You're about to have leadership transitions. You're about to promote someone into a new role and you want to be proactive in helping them be successful. Absolutely. When new initiatives are coming out, that would be a great time to involve a coach, even around like, how are we communicating this initiative? What may some of the hiccups be? So yes, absolutely. There are ways you can be proactive.
Yeah, I always wondered, like, some people seem like they're very good interviewers, and then they get on the job, their whole attitude changes, like, how does one, you know, to find that out? Like, is it even possible to predict?
I think everybody tries to put forth their best face in an interview. Like that. No, you really aren't going to find a lot of people who just come in and just interview it and not give it their all because they're there for one reason to
Mm,
get a job. So you may have to be very mindful of listening to what they're not saying in the interview process and better understand if this person is going to be the best fit for the role. I worked with a client before who always only wanted to do just standard interview questions. They really didn't dig deeper, but she was wondering why they were constantly having high turnover.
mhm,
She just wasn't asking the right questions. You really want to do a combination of questions when you're asking. You want to ask behavioral questions. You want to know how a person's going to react if a client blows up in their face and cusses them out. You really want to know how that person's going to react versus them being put in a situation and not knowing how to react or react in a way that you would not prefer. So that's a big piece. I say when you're interviewing. Yes, I remember we had to go through her whole process and change the way we were interviewing because she wanted to know why she kept losing people after 90 days. And that's because she wasn't being transparent in the interview about what the job really entailed. So I think you have to look at it from both sides of the spectrum as a person coming in and also a person who is currently in the organization.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's a question about me. Why? It's like I'm a good interviewer. I don't necessarily last. That's, but I've had my own business for so long that you kind of, is that true? Is like, like some people just need to be on their own, not part of a team or part of the corporate world, right?
That could be true. I think it's about the individual too, though, and what they have to bring to the table. Some people work better alone, but we are not we are individuals who are connected. So we do need people. It just,
Hmm.
how does a person who likes to work alone work with someone else? Like it's about finding those ways and then also helping people through it because none of us can do every single thing by ourselves all of the time because that leads to burnout. That leads to things not getting done. That leads to the ball being dropped in so many other areas. So it just really depends.
Well, like you said, it's generational. I mean, in the sense that there's generational that some people never change their ways. But like in my case, I've learned from mistakes, so I don't make the same mistakes I did when I did in my 20s and 30s. I avoid those situations that I got into or maybe brought on. Would you agree that like their kind of their personality at some point in their life determines why things happen?
Oh, I agree. I think so, yes. But I also feel like people go through different phases of personality.
Hmm.
So who you were at 15 is not the same person as who you are at 35. Like we all go through changes, we all transition. Predictive index is a type of assessment that, you do, especially organizations do when it comes to work related to ensure that like a person fits a specific job or how well they will excel in a job, basically, right? But according to predictive index, you are truly defined who you are between the ages of 19 to 23. So by 23, that's who you are as a person, but it doesn't take into consideration, like, what if I have a traumatic event that happens in my life? Or what if something else happens to me? Even though I'm 23 and something happens to me at the age of 30, how I am might change. So we can't always say that it's going to be the same all the time. It changes just depending on what our life experiences are.
So, what are you seeing as leadership traits that are successful for executives? What do they have in common?
Leadership traits that are, you said,
That are in common for successful leaders? Like, what do
oh,
they say or do?
people who are successful leaders are really ones who are willing to listen and not try to always impose their thoughts on everyone else. So I find people who are very successful in leadership have the ability to lead and not be afraid of leading. That's a big key there, having that confidence and the desire to want to be a leader. Some other traits I would say that I've seen in really successful leaders are leaders who are not afraid to accept feedback. It is very hard when we get feedback, especially feedback we don't like, but being able to accept it, whether you agree or disagree, those are some really good traits that leaders have that I'm seeing.
How much of successful leadership is their personality? Like, are they easy, kind of
Mm.
easygoing, fun to be with, around?
I I think it depends on the type of leader. So I will say you attract the type of people around you based on your personality. So different types of personalities are going to attract different type of people. If I'm an introvert, but I am able to get the job done and do what I do, I'm going to attract other people who are very similar to me who like to do the same thing. If I'm a data person, I'm working with people who are dealing with numbers, like you attract like-minded people. From a personality perspective, it really depends on how you give it off and what you're trying to attract because that's what you're going to get.
And then how much of technical know-how is important on a leader?
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, I don't know that you need a lot as a leader because it really depends on who you're leading and what type of team is supporting you. And I say that because what I have seen, and this is just based on what I've seen, I have seen a lot of leaders, for example, you talk about technical. Let's talk about Excel for a second. Are you really good with Excel? Um, I have seen a lot of very successful people who use Excel in the day-to-day that suck at using it. They have no experience using it, but they have a team of individuals who can create whatever they need. So
Yeah.
I use it as an example because I have a leader who's really good at using Excel, but it's not necessarily a skill that is necessary at his level. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So I think it just really
Yeah.
depends on the individual and the team that is supporting the individual.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I was just curious because, I've seen people start up companies and I see like the common traits I see is like, yes, this person can talk to everybody. He can talk on the business side. He can talk to staff and employees and, like at the same time has technical know-how because maybe it's his company. And this is more in the IT spaces I've seen. And I've noticed it because, a lot of, and that's just pure technology. I'm not talking about healthcare or anything like that, but probably still relates. But just, in my own experience, it's like, yeah, I can see why he's successful because A,
Yeah.
he's easygoing, able to get along with people, and he has technical know-how. So I was just seeing if that was a
I think it
common.
depends. When you're talking about an entrepreneur versus someone in a corporation, right?
Mhm.
I think those are two different things. Like,
Okay.
because when
Yeah.
you're growing, I've seen it where people have started at the bottom of organization and risen all the way to the top. They can tell you how to do every single job along the way, right?
Mhm.
And I've also seen it where people come into an organization, but they bring such a unique and different skill set. They're able to lead a team just as effectively. Now, when we're talking about a person running their own business, that's a completely different category in my mind because they started a business. So they started because of what they knew, what they developed, probably something they created. When you talk about, especially in technology, you creating your own program, that's completely different from someone who's coming in and just running someone else's program. So I think
Right.
I get what you're saying and I understand completely, but I really think
Yeah,
it depends on
I get what you're saying too, because I see like in this corporate world, it's like, how did this CEO get this job? It's like,
yeah.
or how did this person get that job? It's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to business owners or executives who are unsure if coaching is right for them or their team?
Okay. So I think the first thing I would tell them is to start with like an introductory call to understand exactly what it is that coaching is. So they can have an opportunity to express their areas of concern, but also give feedback on like, okay, well, I see these are some areas that I would work with you in, and allow them to truly understand the full scope of coaching. Another thing I would do is explain what coaching is and what coaching isn't. Um, a lot of people are very hesitant when you talk about transitioning to coaching because they don't realize that it's not the coach doing all of the work. It's actually a collaborative partnership. So helping them understand that coaching is going to be there to help them create goals, grow, have that accountability, um, and then also help them understand that coaching isn't therapy. I think a lot of people get the two confused. While a coach is, they're in kind of a therapeutic nature in that I'm listening to everything you're bringing to the table. Um, having a dialogue with you, talking it through. We're helping to identify some of your triggers at times or things from the emotional level. So also helping to work through that and helping them understand that. And then I want to say probably the biggest thing about when a person is unsure about coaching is helping them understand their return on investment. Like when you take the time to invest in coaching, it improves so many things with from an organizational perspective. So there's higher employee engagement, better decision making from a leader. They have a stronger team performance. So it has a lot of um, benefits that come back to the organization.
How do you structure your costs for your services?
Okay, so my services are, it depends on the client. So if you go to my webpage, you'll see I have it broken out depending on what type of services a person needs. If it's just one-on-one coaching, or if they're seeking personal development, or if they want HR consulting services, or if they're seeking leadership services like for their team or individual. It just really would depend based on what the client needs, or, the organization needs. So we can do, you know, a 3-month engagement, a 6-month engagement. It really depends on the client and what their goal is to achieve. So, and all of
Right.
my packages are competitive with the
Right.
market. So it just really depends.
Or what's the best way for potential clients to reach out to you to start the process?
They can contact me by going to my webpage. They can go to tatondragrantcoaching.com, or they can send an email to info@tatondragrantcoaching.com. Those are the best ways to get in contact with me. Um, They can send a chat from the webpage as well, and they'll get a response.
Do you have any, or by any chance, do you have any checklists or reference guides that might be helpful to prospective clients in working with you?
I don't have any specific checklists or reference guides, but if they go on and book a free call, we can talk through like things for them, if that works for otherwise they can email me and I can send something back if they have any particular questions.
Okay.
It's just about coaching and what it is. I'm happy to respond to those as well.
For anyone wanting to know more about executive coaching, what are the 3 most important things that they should remember or take away?
Um, I would say the biggest 3 takeaways from coaching, hmm, that coaching is not um, work done by the coach, that a person has to be willing and ready and able to do the job to get to the next goal. Like that is the biggest part. Coaching is not effective if a person isn't willing to take the time and actually, put in the effort to do it, to make the change. I would say that's probably the biggest one. The second thing is that coaching takes time. It isn't a quick fix. You're not going to have a coaching session today and be a changed person tomorrow. It is a, it is a process. We develop new habits every day. The more you practice at it, the greater you'll get. So whatever skill it is you want to learn, whatever your goal may be, the more you practice at it, um, that's, you have to put in the work. I hate to say it like that, but that's the truth. And then also that the biggest thing I really want people also to remember, coaching is not therapy. It's not going to focus on, the past of your life. We're really focused on this moment in the present you. So that is the biggest piece. We really want you to understand like what you do now is going to impact how you continue to be in the future.
Yeah, I think, from what I've been listening to you, the term coaching is actually very appropriate because you're coaching and you're not the player. The player is the player, you're the coach.
Mhm.
The player has to do the job.
Mm.
Player has to perform.
Yeah, I would agree with you there.
That's I like that. I like that. Then you see how coaching really applies. I guess the last question would be, is there anything else that we forgot or you would like to mention? We covered a lot, didn't we?
We did. We covered a lot.
Yeah.
Good. I guess
Well,
I will say, like, coaching has a tremendous reward. Like, a lot of people don't realize the impacts on coaching because they only think it's from an organizational perspective, but it's truly a personal development tool as well. We often talk about coaching in, the organization reaches out, the organization, wants to see this person be successful. But coaching is also about that personal development, and building those skills, to continue to grow and develop and learning tools to continue to utilize in the future. So I just really want people to know that.
Good, good. Well, I learned a lot about you and your services. I'm glad I cold called you and you picked up and we established a conversation. Like as I said in the beginning, my job is to help explain your business to other power partners as efficiently as possible. But I also have to learn myself. And like I said, I didn't know anything about executive coaching myself. So this has been very enlightening and very helpful to what we're trying to do at Power Partners. And there's, I already have ideas to follow up on based on this and what to keep my ear open for. And, we're looking forward to you moderating our event next week. You're
Super
the
excited.
perfect person for it, I'd say. So that there's all those good things. So thank you for your time today. Really
You.
appreciated talking with you. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Okay.
You have a good one, Alan. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.